All right, we are so close to being able to understand the solution to chapter 17 now. All right, we've come quite a bit. I'm going to create myself a new project. It's going to be a console again, and this is I don't know if it's the last time we'll be doing consoles, but the next one I promise we'll be back to the .NET framework again, or not so much. We're in the .NET framework, but we'll be in the Forms framework. First, what I want to show you before I create something is that I've got a new file out there called employees, and employees is really it's going to look like a spreadsheet because of course that's what the operating system does. But if you look at it, it's basically a bunch of people and their employee ID, their first name, last name, and email. That's kind of what it is. And again, that did look like a spreadsheet, but if I was to right click on it and open it in, let's say, Notepad or something like that, right, open in Notepad, that's basically what the data looks like. Please note, by the way, it's got a header row as well. All right. So anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read this data in. I'm going to alter the data, and then I'm going to spit it out in another file. That's what we're going to do. So it's kind of similar, but not quite. So what I want to do is I'm going to create this thing called HRDB, we'll say, because it's actually getting really close to a database. If you consider the definition of a database being an organized collection of information. Anyway, HRDB, awesome. I'm going to go next, and off we go. Now, I do have some code off to the side just to speed things up a little bit because you don't need to see me constantly recreating everything. But the first thing we're going to do, though, is we're not just going to read this in. We're going to use objects for this one. I'm going to create an object, a composite data type that can actually store this information. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create an object that can actually store this information. So again, this is not going to replace looking at the book, but you can see I'm going to go out here and hit the enter button. Make sure I'm in the right spot. Yes, I'm in the right spot. Yes, I am. All right. And I'm going to create myself a public class. So a public class, and this is going to be called employee, right? So I'm calling it employee. I'm making my own class. And the employee, oops, actually, let's go back. I've already blown it. Go back. And I think, no, I'm never going to get the hang of this there. All right, that's good. So there's my employee class. Now, first thing, create a constructor. The first constructor I'm going to create, which is kind of what they did for their actual assignment. Sorry, they created basically a constructor that really didn't do anything. Why for you are doing that to me? Oh, constructor has got the parentheses. There you go. All right, so there's a nice, basically empty constructor, and I must have, in all of my typing, screwed up the parentheses there too. Okay, so there's that. So I got myself a nice little class. Wonderful. Let's get ourselves an actual constructor now. This is going to be a little bit more typing than I'm probably going to be able to do without making an error. But here is this constructor. But rather than have an empty argument list, I'm going to pass in. I'm going to have it set for the variables or the attributes. Now, if we're talking objects, the attributes that exist, I'm going to have it set for employee, first name, last name, and email, and the various data types. Looking up to my screen on this side, but it's going to be basically, there's going to be an integer, employee number. Ooh, how mainframey that was just there. There's going to be a string of first name. There's going to be a string of last name. There's going to be a string of email. All right, so that's awesome. And then what does this constructor do? What's going to happen is I'm going to pass in a number, a string, and an email, and it's going to be shooting back out an object that's got that actual data in it. So how do I get this stuff to go into those attributes? You'll notice that currently there aren't any attributes yet because of the style of the actual assignment. You know what? Actually, I'm going to leave that. I'll leave that for a second, and I'll actually do the what's called the accessor methods again. If you looked at the book, so if I wanted to basically populate the no, I'm going back to my original thought here. My original thought was this, literally this. So basically this employee, employee. Oh no, see, no, okay. I knew why I did this. All right, I got it. So first of all, I would like to create these attributes first. So they're going to be public, integer, employee, notice the capital there, employee number. And what I'm asking for here is basically the default get and the default set methods. Okay, cool. Don't know why you want that extra step there, but oh, you're just gonna really push my buttons. Awesome. Then there's gonna be another public. This is a string, and this is gonna be first, again, capital, first name with, again, the get set. Notice that this thing seems to know what I'm talking about, but basically I'm asking it for the default. I'm gonna control these variables through the objects getting and setting. So let's go public string last name get set, and then finally public string email get set. All right, cool. So we got all that done. So now up here, I'm going to go this employee number. So you notice that these guys are actually now values. This employee number is going to be assigned the employee number from the argument list at the top, from the header. This first name is going to be assigned the first name from the header, with a semicolon. And this last name is going to be assigned the last name from the header. And finally, this email is going to be assigned the email from the header. You relax for 10 seconds, you're going to get those errors. All right, so this guy's going to compile cleanly. Honestly, it doesn't really do anything, right? It's just basically I created a class. Let's talk about basically how we're going to use this class if I just wanted to use it in here. So I'll keep the hello world, but if I want to basically, we kind of saw this a little bit with the lists. We've seen this with some other stuff before, but now this is our own. It's our own class. So if I want basically to make an employee called Grant Spencer now, I can go employee is going to be the data type. This is going to be the variable. I'll just say emp maybe. And what is it? It's a new employee. And then I'm going to pass in things like the attributes I want. So for example, 1, 2, 3, Grant Spencer, and then some goofy email. So that will basically create an employee object called with Grant Spencer. I will try to do this in a debug way if this works. All right, so let's go. And what I'm hoping we'll see is the as we step through this, what this looks like. I haven't actually tried this in the all right. That was pretty cool. That was so cool. I should probably stop and do that again. All right, so our thing's there right after our breakpoint, not thing. Our breakpoint is there right after the console hello. All right, so we're going to basically hit the F11. It in theory printed hello world somewhere. Different debuggers would show that different spots. Now notice that as soon as I step into this line, it goes up to the employee class. And now it's going to this constructor, not this constructor, because the argument list matches this constructor. I hit F11. It's going in, and you're going to see it along the bottom. You can kind of see these are the arguments. This is actually the employee for this program, for this class. I'm going to go next. And step request resulted in automatic step over. Sure, I'm going to accept that. Okay, are you going to do the same thing? Yeah. You're going to do the same thing? Yeah. You're going to do the same thing? Yeah. Now, what I'm hoping though, we get to see the object at all. Is it in here? No. No, we don't get to see it. Anyway, some visualizations will actually show you what it is. But okay, so you can just imagine sitting in memory now, there's an employee called Grant. And if I want basically to sort of see what Grant looks like, one thing I don't think I did even on this thing, did I? Well, you'll see that in the solution. But if I want to basically at this point see like what is EMP's first name, I can go over here, console, right line, and then EMP dot. And notice you got all these choices. You say what's the first name, and then go like that, and then go. And so this thing, oh darn it, the breakpoints. Okay, forget it. Here we go. Now let's try it again without the breakpoints. And there's Grant right there. All right. So try to sort of get this idea in your head that this is basically, this guy is the employee object. And then down here, we've created an EMP of that object type. Here I'm accessing one of the attributes directly, which I don't think is actually good form for this, but yeah. But I guess that's good enough for now for this example. All right, so now to make this a little bit cooler, because I'd like to actually be able to read this file. So first thing, as I said, I have copied, I got some code here. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just grab those variables and I'm going to do this where I'm just going to basically keep them inside. So there's a string, there's our directory, there's a string, there's our file. Notice it's a comma delimited file for this one. And here's our other string for our output file, right? So we got some nice little variables there. And then now I want to be able, each one of these employees is going to be an entry in a list. So our buddy, the list comes back. I know I can just feel your excitement for that. It's going to be a list of not strings, but a list of employee. Right, it's going to be a list of employee. I'm going to call this list employees, and right there that just creates a list. But I'm actually going to create the object here, list employee. All right, so there we go. So that will give myself a nice little list. By the way, obviously, well, no, not by the way, we're done. All right, so now the next bit here is to do the input section, which is just going to be the straight read that you've seen before, like that. You know, I guess if we want to keep our indenting constant, there it is. So this is going to create something called stream reader, but stream reader, of course, isn't coming in by default. So we need our IO there. There's stream reader. Okay, wait, whoa, oh, and this guy isn't coming in by default because remember, we need that collections library. So using system collections generic. Okay, now everyone should be back to being friends again. And you are mad because that is not a constructor, Grant. That's a constructor. All right, good deal. So we got our list employees. We got our reading going on. I tell you what, I'm going to deliberately make a mistake here. I'm going to take the while part. Remember, this is the, we're going to go into a loop, right? So I'm going to go into loop. While there's something here, let's just at this point, while there's something here, let's do our read line, and we're going to create a nice little string, which is going to be a row. So we're going to do a row, and we're going to close off the while, and I think that's more or less done. We're going to totally ignore this. Okay, yeah, I'm just going to throw that code out. Let's see, this should flow through. We're not printing anything. It's just basically reading. Let's go. All right, and it's mad because can't access the file this because it's being used by another process. Wow, IO exception. That looks like a good example for a try catch, but I'm going to wuss out and just pretend that that error will never happen and try it again. All right, so it worked. Perfect. Now that's our string row. that would grab the entire row of that data. Yuck, right? We don't want that. What we want to be able to do is split it into columns. There is our fabulous string array for that. I can go columns, and that's going to be our row. Now that's just a string, but every string knows how to split itself, and I'm going to split it by commas. This might be worth the debug so we can see it happen. So let's go in here. Let's go. Awesome. We hit the F11. And so now our row is this. And now as I go split, this may cause a problem. No, actually, no, it shouldn't. All right, so columns is now a string array with 4 elements in it. Awesome. Okay, good deal. Right, and so that's pretty cool. If I wanted to actually access each of those methods, I would go something to the effect, or each of those columns, I'd go console dot write line, and I would say something to the effect of columns indexed by 0. And then I'll do the same thing, copy, paste, and may index, but I'm just going to do the first couple. And you can kind of see this thing run. Let's take that off and let's run it. And there are the first few, right? So that's pretty cool. All right, so now that we understand that, what are we going to do? We now actually have our row split into the array. Now what we want to do is basically shove each of these elements, each of these entries in the array into the attributes of the employee object. For us to do that, we need to actually have an employee object. So we're going to create an employee object, and I'm going to call it employee, and it's going to be a new employee like that. Now this is coming in blank. Remember, that was the other constructor. We had 2 constructors. One, you had to say everything, and then the other one, you could just basically say, make it blank. And now we're just going to use the get set methods for this. So I'm going to say, I'm so hesitant because there's going to be a couple of explosions that's going to happen when I do this. But you know what? You guys have seen me explode for a bunch of different reasons now. Let's grab the first name. We're going to grab the first name, and we're going to say the first name is column 1, because that was the element of that first name. And I think what we're going to do is just pull that out. Okay, so I'm going to say, hey, print the first name. Go. So it worked, which seems pretty awesome. All right, I love it. All right, so that seems to be the way we're going to do this. So let's go ahead and grab the employee number. And we go. Now notice it's mad. It's angry at this point that we're going to try to do this. Why? Well, it's basically saying that this is an integer and it's a string. And I'll remind you that when we look at this guy, the employee number for this object is defined as an integer, not a string. Oh, are we screwed? No, we are not screwed. All we have to do now is use that either parse or convert. I'm going to go convert. We're going to use the convert object, convert the object to int, so int 32, convert this thing to an integer 32. That should solve the problem, he says, but there's one more problem that I can see happening here. Input string is not in the correct format. Now I wish here we could see what was in the array, but we can't. At least I don't know how yet. So here's how this would work. We might want to go look at the data. Say, well, what's your problem? Well, the problem with the data, oh, it's locked for editing. Okay, sure. This is the first row. It's trying to take this value and throw it into an integer field. So it's pretty mad at us. So what we're going to do is, rather than just maximize a bunch of stuff for no reason and lose my mouse, what we're going to do is we're going to basically end it. I want to throw away that first row. So I'm going to create myself a string. which I'm going to call header row, and it's going to be assigned the text in dot read line, not read to end. Read to end, by the way, would get the entire file into that header row, which is not a bad deal, but that's not what I want. Read line. Oh, that's it. Yeah, read line. So basically read that first line, and I'm going to comment to future developers that throw away header line. Now I think we're at a point that this should work. And it did. It basically sucked in all the things, and it was a pretty clean run. All right, so we're getting a sense as to how we're going to populate these things now, right? I may as well just go one step further or finish this off, this thought. So I want the employee dot last name probably is assigned column. This is where it helps that I know the order that these things are being read in. And the employee dot email is assigned, the column is assigned the column of 3. All right, this is absolutely not the best way to do this. There are definitely predefined methods and stuff, but as we try to understand this, it's not bad. So this basically loads up the array, loads up the list of employee objects. And remember, when we're finished, let's be clean about this and close. All right, let's close it off. And so now this thing would be a nice clean run. All right. As far as processing, so that's the, input, processing, output. As far as processing, let's add employees. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create employee. Actually, I'll just go new guy. New guy is assigned a new employee, and I'm going to pass in 999. Well, oops, not single quotes. Grant Spencer goofy email. Totally spelled wrong, but who cares? So I got myself the new guy, and now what I'm going to do, oh, I forgot a major thing here, guys. I've got a list, but I never bothered to actually, I created my little employee object, but I never actually added that employee object to the list.